The following podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, medical, or any type of professional advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, laws and regulations surrounding sexuality, relationships, and consent can vary by location and are subject to change. If you have specific legal or medical concerns, we strongly recommend consulting with a licensed professional in your jurisdiction. Listener discretion is advised, as this podcast may discuss adult themes and sensitive topics. By continuing to listen, you confirm that you are 18 years or older. Welcome to the Siren of Freedom podcast, sounding the alarm by bringing clarity and freedom to the realm of sexuality. Our aim is to give others a place to share their stories and release themselves from the weight of shame and guilt. Of the Siren of Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Siren, and today I have a guest with me, Scarlett. Say hello.
Hello.
And we are going to cover the topic of growing up in the purity culture. So this should be a good one for everyone, and we'll get into what it actually is for those of you that may be a foreign concept. You're probably really, really lucky if you don't know what it is. So we'll get into that here in just a second. So tell us a little bit about who you are right now in present day, Scarlett. You know, what's your current relationship status? What's your occupation? If you want to tell us your age range, you don't have to say your exact age.
Yes. So I am in my 40s. And I have been married for 22 years, and I am a mom, and I have like a really easy part-time job that just gives me something to do, and I'm a dance enthusiast. That's one of my favorite things to do, and that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Okay. Awesome. So tell us a little bit about what your family dynamic was growing up.
So I was raised in a very patriarchal, classic, a mom, a dad. Dad works, mom is at home. I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and I was put in the role of, taking care of my younger siblings a lot. I started babysitting when I was 10. And like babysitting other people's kids around that time, just kind of, I was told that it was so important for me to be an example to my younger siblings, to show them how the right way to live is.
So I didn't know this beforehand, but we're both oldest children. I have quite a few more siblings. I'm not going to say the exact number, but, and very similar. My dad worked, my mom stayed at home, and paved the way for your younger siblings and, let them see what you need to do. Are your parents still married?
They are.
And how many years?
They have been married for 40, let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to do the math, but like between 45 and 50 years.
Yeah,
so.
My parents as well. And they're still married. So, did you grow up religious?
Yes. Very conservative. I don't mind saying Mormon background. My family is pioneer stock on all sides. So we're very traditional Mormon background, very religious. Everybody I knew was a member, and that was just the culture I was raised in.
So all the way through, like from birth all the way until you left home?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was very active in the Mormon religion until I was about 20. Like it was a really large part of my life and part of my identity until, my early 20s.
Till then. Similar. I didn't grow up Mormon, but I was very conservative Christian. And, the same thing. Just really a lot of rules, a lot of pressure to do certain things a certain way all the time. But specifically, since this is, about, having the freedom to express your sexuality in the way that is best for you, I specifically want to talk about like your family dynamic and your parents and what they taught you about sex. And then also we'll get into, what our religions taught about sex too.
Right.
So what did your parents, because sometimes it's a little bit different,
Yeah. So I was raised that sex outside of marriage is bad.
Yep.
I was raised that there are 3 sins that can never be taken back.
Oh.
Murder,
Okay.
suicide, and having sex outside of marriage. Notice rape wasn't one of those. Having sex outside of marriage. Because it was something like losing your virginity is something you can never take back. Once you lose it, you lose it. And nobody wants already chewed gum. So,
or a licked cupcake.
Yes.
Or a crumpled gift.
Yes. And so I was raised that way, but it was also very contradictory because I was raised that sex outside of marriage was bad, but my parents were happily married and had an active sex life. And from the time I was like in 4th grade, I could hear them having sex. And like I remember walking to school, I was in 4th grade and walking and thinking, I'm abused. I can hear my parents having sex. And it was so mortifying. And I didn't tell them for years. But so I had, like the sex was okay, kind of. But it was also very confronting to me and gross because like nobody wants to hear your parents have sex. One time they actually had sex in my bed and I caught them.
Oh boy.
And so it was just very conflicting, but it was drummed in my head repeatedly that if I had sex before marriage, I would not go to the celestial kingdom, which in the Mormon faith is the highest rank of heaven you can be in.
Right.
And also that I would get pregnant.
Oh, yeah. I was deathly afraid of him. I was like, even if it just gets close to me, I'm probably going to get pregnant.
Yeah.
My dad has a direct line to God.
Yeah. Well, and it was drummed into me. Our family, we're fertile myrtle. Like you'll get pregnant. All it takes is one time. And so that was just something that was repeatedly just drilled into my head to keep me
So
from
it was
having
like
sex.
it tried to gross you out, but then they clearly were, open about their enjoyment of it. So it kind of creates this barrier in your mind of like, it's gross, it's gross, it's gross. And then the minute you get married, you're expected to flip the switch.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden, it's amazing. Everything's amazing. Yes. So how did that affect you when you got to that point of marriage? Were you still inside the Mormon faith when you got married?
No, I actually left the church before I got married. So I did not, spoiler alert, I did not wait until I was married to have sex. I know. I'm a harlot. Scarlett the harlot.
There you go.
But so I did not wait. But it was, I was very conflicted about it. After the first time I had sex, I was convinced my mom would be able to tell just by looking at me. I was like it was a scarlet letter branded on me, you know? So.
Yeah. And so then did you experience naturally like a lot of guilt and shame over it? Because I know my dad's voice was just like ringing in my head all the time.
Yes. So although I did not have sex as a teenager, or before I was 20, I did not have sex. I still fooled around. one of my biggest rebellions. I was very, like, as a teenager, very obedient. I didn't party. I didn't, like, skip school. I got good grades. But my one rebellion was boys and making out with them. But anytime it got to a certain point, I would have alarm bells going off in my head thinking, you're going to burn in hell and you're going to get pregnant. And so I was always able to stop it and, and cut it off right there. And it was probably really frustrating for whoever I was
fooling around with. But I was a good girl. So I don't even know how many boys I kissed. But I mean, I didn't have sex. So right? I know. I was really good and didn't do anything besides make out with boys until the man I ended up marrying the first go round.
Oh, wow.
But
you held out.
Yeah. I don't know how. Probably because I just would stay away. I'd just stay away from boys. Just, flee temptation altogether.
Oh, good for you.
And not put myself in that position. But again, I was so afraid, right? And I don't know. I was just like, there would be nothing worse than, having to go up in front of the church and confess that you're pregnant, because that happened to teenagers, like that would get pregnant.
Oh, absolutely.
And they would bring them in front of the church and like, they're sorry and they just need everyone to forgive them. And like, but I'm like, I always was like, what are they doing?
Right.
Like, they're acting like this baby is wrong or because of how it got there,
Yeah.
Because they weren't married.
Yeah.
But it's like, ugh.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just remember thinking stuff was so messed up.
Absolutely. Well,
so
a big thing in the Mormon church is when somebody gets pregnant, adoption is the first thing that anybody talks about, and so it would be a big, but it would be a big thing, and there was a lot of judgment. I mean, not to go off the rails here, but in that religion, I think a lot of organized religion, when it's easy to see something that someone else is doing and see it as a sin, it's easy to judge. And so something external, such as a pregnancy, you can see that. It's not like somebody cheating and stealing from their friends. You can't see that. So it's easier, something that's visible, to judge and feel holier than thou about.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And so
teenage pregnancy. Well, any pregnancy outside of marriage.
And where I grew up was actually at one point had the highest teen pregnancy rate per capita in the United States.
Right, because there's no education besides abstinence, Like they don't teach you anything else. Like I just, talk to my friends and talk to my friends' moms and, to find out about condoms and birth control and other things. Not that I ever ended up utilizing them, but I at least wanted to know because it was like abstain. That's it. Which you're like, oh, and then they don't abstain, and then look what happens,
Right. We had, in our schools, they did have like a sex education program. So they did, like somebody from the county health department would come and talk to us about all the different contraception and everything. But we were in this culture, like it was a pretty small town. And so you were worried that if you went to the Planned Parenthood or, to get that, your mom was going to find out that you got condoms or that you went on birth control. We didn't know that there were laws preventing that at the time.
Right.
But I mean, you never know in a small town. And I think the other thing about contraception as a teenager in a purity culture is that if you go and get contraception, you're planning on having sex instead of waiting to the heat of the moment. When you're in the heat of the moment, then it's an accident, right? It's not premeditated. But if you go and get on birth control, you're basically planning to have sex. So what's your defense then?
Right. I got on birth control, I don't know. It was probably like 6 months before I got married. And we weren't engaged yet. So my mom found it and she was like, what is this? And I was like, Mom, it takes like 6 months to like really get in your system to prevent pregnancy effectively,
Mhm.
and she's like, well, you're not even engaged. I'm like, I know he's going to propose soon. Like,
Mhm.
so even that, she was like, here's somebody who's like getting ready to get married and then still, the whole thing. And then they would make comments like, we're going to get you guys down to the altar pure if it's the last thing we do. And I was like, what is your definition of pure? Because,
Right.
we didn't done everything but penetration.
Exactly.
So,
Well, and that was the thing. My husband also grew up in purity culture, and he told me that a girl told him that she was a virgin, and he's like, well, that's interesting, because he'd heard the stories. And apparently she was going around having anal sex, but because
Oh,
it wasn't
yeah.
vaginal penetration, she was a virgin.
Right.
Like there's just like a lack of education when sex is so taboo. Like, girl, it's called anal sex. Sex is,
Mhm.
part of the word.
Right. Or the soaking.
So, yeah, the soaking.
That is so funny to me. I
Mhm.
just found out what that was like a couple years ago.
Uh-huh.
And so for the listeners, soaking is basically when, the male will put his penis into the female's vagina, and then on the bed, somebody else will like jump on the bed so that they're actually not, thrusting. Like it's just happening because the bed is bouncing. So that's
Right.
called soaking. So weird. Anyways, I'm just feeling really opinionated right now.
Yeah.
But
That's what you're here for.
yeah, so this is just my opinion. But it's just so crazy because it's just like I know that some of my siblings, like, they loved growing up in purity culture.
Mm-hmm.
They loved like the true love waits and like signing the purity pledge and doing the ring and all of that. And it's just like almost when my parents like gave me that little necklace, it was a necklace, not a ring. I just was like, I don't know. It just didn't feel like how my other sisters were like really excited about it. And then one of my sisters, waited all the way until she got married to even kiss her husband. And they're like so glad they waited and they love everything about it. And so it's just like completely different thing. But I think there's just so many damaging things like we've talked about.
Right.
In just feeling such a beautiful act that is a lot of fun. That's the reason that most of us are here on this planet. Right. And just making it into something that's just so fearful and shameful.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's interesting because you said you got like a necklace and for your purity, and I've heard of purity rings. Where I grew up, or the culture I grew up in, that wasn't a thing. So it was more shame-based rather than pride-based.
Right.
Rather than, wow, I have my purity, I'm so proud of myself, and here's this token to show how pure I am. It was more guilt-based, like you need to be pure or else you're going to go to hell. Like it's just a given that you're going to be pure. So I just think that's kind of an interesting difference.
Right.
Between, the different cultures and stuff. So
yeah, I like that you pointed that out too, because, at least on this side, on my upbringing, they were trying to make it something positive, but there still was the comments of like, the chewed gum or the licked cupcake or the crumpled gift, things like that. But overall, it was like something to hold on to and be proud of. And I just was like, huh. And then, of course, after I got married, when I had a 17-second wedding night, like literally, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's it. That's what I've been waiting for.
I fortunately never had that experience because I've never had sex with a virgin. So
yeah, that's awesome. That was my only one to my knowledge.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and then it didn't get a lot better. And so it was just like kind of discouraging to think about how all my life I've been holding on to this gift for my future husband. And then he's like, it's not a good combination.
Well, and I think it is very built up. As
Oh,
a
yeah.
girl, you're led to believe you'll be laid down on a bed of roses and there will be candles everywhere. It's going to be the most impressive, amazing, most spiritual moment of your life. And then that doesn't happen. You know what I mean? Like, then you have this guy.
I love that
all of a sudden, you're
description.
supposed to be like turning a switch. First of all, you think sex is bad. Now, all of a sudden, you're supposed to be okay with it. And number two, you got this guy pawing at you and he has no idea what he's doing and what you need. Because, like, as a woman, we're a crock pot, not a microwave. You know,
Right.
like, we need to be coaxed into it. And so it's just really unfortunate that
Yeah.
we're misled to believe what it really is.
Yeah. And there are those times, like, you know, now that I'm married again, you know, my husband now, like, I've definitely had the bed of rose petals and spiritual experience, but
Right. And
not with that.
it can definitely
but not
be.
with that first try.
No.
No, ma'am.
Yeah, absolutely not.
So what other things that, you know, well, I guess this is a good question for this is, what is your take on it now? And like, you have children, so how do you educate them now? And what do you talk to them about regarding purity or sex in general? Like, I think that's really good.
So a couple different things. I don't mind sharing that I have daughters. And that's, you know, it can be scary as a mom of daughters because the consequences of sex can sometimes be more lasting for a girl than a boy. With pregnancy, mostly being the biggest thing, because a lot of times the girls are left, they're the ones being judged. They're the ones, you know, like in purity culture, the onus of a girl's virtue is put on the girl. You know, the responsibility of what boys think is put on the girl. Like, I can't tell you how many times I was told, you can't wear that because what are the boys going to think?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Or a slit or anything.
Yes. Oh my gosh. An inch of your stomach is showing, the boy's going to pop a boner. You know what I mean? Like, so with my kids, I don't ever want them to feel shame about their bodies. And I don't want to teach them that they're responsible for the thoughts of others, because honestly, we have no control over what somebody else thinks of us. And I really believe that my children are autonomous human beings. They are not an extension of me. So I can't put my will on them. This is their life. The only person that's going to be walking in their shoes their entire life is them. With that being said, it's my job as their mother to guide them and teach them, like, this is the way the world works. So, I mean, with their ages, we haven't gotten into like a lot of real nitty gritty stuff. We've started with like the mechanics of sex and what sex is. So like, I have the silly book that's like, this is how a flower procreates, and then this is how a rooster procreates. And it's very scientific, just so they understand the science of it. And I talked to them and said, you know, sometimes it's not just for making babies. Sometimes adults like to do it because they enjoy it, you know, and that's okay for them to know that. I have a teenager now, and so now we're getting into the talks of like hormones. And, you know, personally, I don't care if my daughter has sex. That's, like I said, she is a human being. But I would like for her to wait till she's like in college. Just because I feel like she would be at an age that could handle the consequences of her actions. You know, she'd be more capable and have the tools to deal with those. And when you're a teenager and you have sex and you're a girl, it confuses your feelings. You know, you get the hormones and it makes you think you feel things that maybe you don't. But those are things that I just feel like I just have to be open and honest and have those conversations instead of just chalking up to like, you're going to burn in hell or you're going to get pregnant. Like I need to have in-depth conversations and treat her like she is a smart enough person to pick up on these things. And I have to just like, hope and pray that works. I mean,
yeah. And that she has choice.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's the most important thing to me is that my children have choices in their life. So, yeah.
And I have a mixture. I have both male and female children. And my daughter, I was telling somebody this earlier, when she started probably around 14, being really like hormonal, like we talked about the mechanics long before that, but I've always been just really open with my kids. Even my husband is shocked by things I will say to them, just because I don't ever want them to grow up like I did, and how everything was just like, oh, I'm just gonna answer bare minimum, make it awkward, and that's how I grew up, just really awkward conversations. And so I didn't want my kids to grow up like that. I wanted them to be able to ask questions and then, why are boobs different sizes? Well, all body parts are different sizes, noses, ears, just answer it like the sky is blue, the grass is green.
Right.
Boys have penises, just straightforward. So then, when she was about 14, she came to me and she said, can I get a vibrator?
Oh, wow.
And I said, well, why do you want one? And she said, I don't feel emotionally mature enough to have sex yet. But when I'm at school, all I can do is think about kissing every boy I see. And she's like, and I can't concentrate on my work. And I would just think that if I had a vibrator, then I could learn about my body more and also just get some relief so that I can concentrate at school.
So can I just say, like, I think that that's amazing. One, that like so many things about that are amazing. So like one, that she was able to identify those feelings and verbalize them. Two, that she felt comfortable enough to come and talk to you. That obviously you guys have had an open enough dialogue that she felt comfortable to come and talk to you about that. That you were receptive to it, like, and accepted that. Like so like I started masturbating when I was really young. I was like 7.
Oh yeah.
And I would masturbate. I would hump my pillow, and I remember always like, for some reason the next day something would happen and I would feel like it was a really bad day. And that was God punishing me.
Right. Because how dare you enjoy the body that he designed?
I was sinning, and so I was being punished. And I was told girls are perverts if they masturbate. It's normal for boys. Boys masturbate, and that's totally normal. But if you're a girl and you masturbate, that means you're a pervert. So it's an interesting juxtaposition. But I just want to applaud you that you had an open enough dialogue with your daughter that she felt comfortable, and how amazing that she was able to identify that and come up with a solution.
Before she even talked to me.
Yeah. Well, before, like that she sat and thought it through and was like, well, here's my problem. What would be an effective solution that wouldn't be me just going out and kissing every boy? That shows like some emotional maturity, I feel like.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing because then when I told my friends about it, they're like, did you get her one? I was like, well, of course. She
I took her to Adam and Eve and showed her every.
We just got on Amazon because you can't actually go on Adam and Eve if you're under 18. Yeah. So, but if I didn't know that, like, I probably would be that mom taking her teenage girl. My husband would be like, I'm not going to drive you guys. And then, it wasn't until she was almost 18 that she was ready to have sex. And she said, hey, probably need to get on some birth control. I'm ready to have sex. I feel like I'm getting close. So we did that. And it was just cool because I didn't even tell my mom I was going to the doctor when I got birth control. So it was just such a difference of being able to just like enjoy all these experiences and life milestones instead of feeling like she had to hide. And so I just felt like complete in that moment of like what I didn't have with my mom, I was able to like give my daughter. So it was really healing for me. And then when she lost her virginity, it was kind of like an organized thing. It was like a friend of a friend who was experienced. And so she basically just talked to him and he was like, yeah, I mean, he's like, man, I'll take one for the team and
I know,
help you lose your virginity. I'm sure it was tough for him.
I'm sure he was really devastated.
But it was
by
cool
that.
because all the parents involved, like, I think except my daughter didn't tell her dad, but we both knew. And then the other parents involved all knew that it was going down. So they like gave him the house and the space. And,
oh, wow. How progressive.
And yeah. And then he picked her up like it was like a date or something. And, the whole thing. And then brought her home and made sure she was good. And she followed up the next day, and it was a really cool experience. Like she called and told me about it. And I was like, man, that was so different.
Yeah.
And so cool to just be able to hear about it, and just like she just was so excited and happy, and then it also set the bar so that, she was a little bit wild for a few months and then it was not good quality. And so she was like, you know what, the first time was good. And then,
Right.
So she was like, I'm just going to get to know people better and be more choosy, and then, eventually be with someone I love or whatever. But she just enjoyed herself along the way too. So
yeah,
super cool.
That is amazing that she got to have that experience that you didn't get to have.
Right.
So,
and most people that grew up in the purity culture didn't get to have anything like that. So I just think it's really cool because sex is a thing of beauty and it was created to be a positive experience, not just with love, but with even just with lust but just two people enjoying like just being completely raw and bare with each other,
Right. Well, there's definitely a vulnerability there. For sure. And even when it's not romantic sex, there's still some intimacy there. So
as one human to another, your like breath connects, your energy.
Yeah.
It's really cool. So any final thoughts?
Well, one thing I wanted to talk about,
like where you are, kind of like what,
yeah,
where are you at as far as your thinking and positive or negative, like that have affected you in your current adulthood?
So one thing I wanted to talk about with purity culture is I feel like it's dangerous because it puts girls at risk for like sexual assault. Sexual assault reporting is low already, but for girls that are in purity culture, there is an ownership on them to stay pure. And so they're less likely to report.
Right.
And then the perpetrators are out there longer. So I think in a lot of ways that's, really unfortunate and an unfortunate byproduct of purity culture. So that's something that I have recently learned. And I just wanted to kind of I
think that's really good and definitely worth mentioning because there's a lot of sexual abuse that goes on in different religious organizations. You really have to do a lot to protect yourself in those situations. And, I went to a church like the men didn't take the kids to the bathroom at all. Like no one changed a diaper until they were over 18. Like there was lots of rules because of things like that. So, not just in purity culture, but like just there can be a lot of abuse in those situations. But, that's just a good point of like saying that, like something happens. You're like, well, did I want it? Did I? I didn't want it. I said no,
Right.
but I'm supposed to be a virgin. I'm supposed to be
Right.
pure,
Well,
and I don't want to
now,
tell anyone.
yeah, I did. Elizabeth Smart, do you know who she is?
Mhm.
The girl that was abducted when she was 14 from her home. And
Yeah.
I lived in Utah at the time that happened. So I was like, it was all over the
Big
news.
deal.
It was,
Yeah.
And she has come out and said, because she was raised Mormon, very traditional Mormon, and had been told the same things. And she has come out and said, please stop with the purity culture. It is so damaging to the victims because they're left to feel shame and guilt over something that was done to them. And they've already suffered enough. Like, the last thing they need is to feel less than, over something they had no control over.
Right.
So, I just think that's, an important thing to remember when we're talking to our children and saying, if you are not pure, you're not worthy.
Right.
Because that's the message you're getting, in purity culture as a child and as a teen.
Yeah. And then you will have people later in life, men in churches, I've heard a lot say, oh, well, my wife, I'm just lucky if I get it once a month, blah, blah, blah. Well, you wonder why. It's like her whole upbringing was like, be ashamed of it. And, just your husband physically needs it. So you should do it.
Right.
At least once a month, ladies. Come on. It's like this something. And I just would look around the room, and granted, I didn't even have like a good sex life in my first marriage, like at all. But I still was just like, knew there was more.
Yeah.
I was like, I know that because there would be a few older ladies in the church that would be near you when they were having these talks to the women, like, put out, this week. But some of the old ladies would be like, you don't need to wait till spring break. You can have fun all the time, and those were the ladies I would try to talk to.
Oh, okay.
I would say, tell me how you keep it going. And, I would gravitate towards them, but there wasn't very many. It was mostly like, oh, gonna do it again.
Yeah. It's a weird thing to have to switch from it's your job to not have sex to now it's your job to have sex. Like, if you are a good wife, then you are going to do what your husband needs you to do, which is, spread your legs. And that's just not always possible. There's so many different factors that go into sexuality for a woman, and to have to make that switch and make it like a woman's responsibility. I think it's just like a slippery slope. And I think that's just a big part of purity culture as well, is the idea that, when a woman does get married, that is her job changes, it flips.
From the brakes to the gas pedal.
Yeah.
And we really, it's a lot of mental, but I don't know if I just somehow avoided letting that get into me mentally, because I never remember having to make a switch, or if maybe it was because my parents were like, sex is good, sex is wonderful, but God wants us to have it within the confines of marriage,
Right.
They didn't really do the guilt, shame, it's bad, it's wrong. So I don't know if that was probably part helpful.
Yeah.
And then also I just didn't let that other stuff in. I just kept being like, okay, these people aren't enjoying it. Why?
Yeah.
What else is there? Like, women would be like, I just don't enjoy it. And my heart would like physically hurt. So, I've been talking to women probably for 20 years about this, like, privately. And I was just like, it's time to like get on the microphone here and talk to other people like you,
right,
too, that grew up similar, and like give people a place to tell their stories, you know? So I think it's so important because, I would love to have one of my sisters someday be on here and tell their perspective of like enjoying it and thinking it was good.
Well, yeah, like
and see how that is, you know?
It's funny because like when I did finally lose my virginity, like I said, as a girl in purity culture, you're led to believe like it's going to be this built up thing. Well, I had left the church, and there had been all these things that I found out about the church that I felt like, oh, wow, I had been lied to for a really long time. And it shook the foundations of everything I believed in. And so I definitely decided at one point, I can't remember what the impetus of that was, but I was like, I'm just going to lose my virginity. I'm just going to get it over with. I don't know that I believe in the heaven, hell, that God is vengeful, God is full of grace. And so I just ended up losing my virginity to like I was 20 and he was like 28. He was in the same department at college. He was in the same program as me. And it was like super casual.
Yo, can I get a dick appointment?
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
I did. That was exactly it. And he took out his day planner and wrote it down.
His Palm Pilot.
No, we just kind of hung out a couple times, and I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to do this. So I seduced him, for lack of a better word. And
it took 5 minutes because you're super hot and charming.
Well. I remember it took longer, but it also took me a lot of convincing him that it was okay. He was just, are you sure? Are you sure? Yes, I'm fine. And so I just kind of was like, I'm just going to get it over with. And I did. And it wasn't the bed of roses, but it also wasn't something that I went into hoping, it wasn't a huge disappointment to me either.
Right.
So, I was able to move on to.
It was maybe like a minute, 32 seconds longer than mine, at least. Yeah,
at least. But I do have to say, I had not been prepared. I did not go on birth control. So I was playing it real risky. And we did like the pull-out method, and I didn't get pregnant. Spoiler alert. But my cousin, who is 2 weeks older than me, though, when we were 19, she called me and told me she was pregnant from her boyfriend. And so it was a big thing in our family for her to be pregnant outside of marriage. And they ended up having a shotgun wedding and doing the whole thing, having a total of 4 kids, and then finally got divorced, a few years ago.
Man, we could go on for a while too. We could talk about like also how many kids in our church to get married. You get married and it's like, sex is going to be like 85% of your marriage. No, it's like 15, or less.
Like I do think sex is important in marriage, but I don't think it's the most important thing. And I think it is a barometer.
I'm disappointed.
No, I feel like it's kind of a barometer of the state of a marriage. When things are going good, the sex is good. You know what I mean? But I don't think when things are bad, it's because it's
you don't have time to have as much.
Yeah. I just think the good times aren't because of the sex. I think the sex is
because
because of the good times. Yeah. So
yeah, but anyway. So many of those kids like are divorced. Yeah. They just because you get married because I gotta get married so you can get the golden ticket and have sex. And then you're like, but you didn't have any compatibility overall, because it's kind of that bonding agent. But I told my kids, I was like, try before you buy.
Exactly. Well, that's
because I was like, I wouldn't have married your dad, if we had done it before. And then my daughter laughed and she's like, he said the same thing about you. So
I test drove my car too.
Yeah, it's good to recognize that not me. I signed the papers and then I drove it off the lot and then crapped out in the middle of the intersection. I don't know.
That's funny. Yeah, my husband was actually supposed to be my first one-night stand. So I was like in the middle of a sexual revolution, and he was the third person I'd ever slept with, but he was supposed to be a one-night stand. And here we are 22 years later. So
that's funny.
So
Crazy
in
how
your
those things
face,
happen.
purity.
Oh my goodness. Well, we could talk for hours on this.
Yes,
So
we
we
could.
have had Socrates here, our producer, just listening to this conversation. Do you wanna chime in your thoughts about what we've been discussing? Do you have
I loved it. I loved how articulate you are about it, and you have put a lot of thought into this.
Oh, thank you.
So Scarlett, my question to you is, what advice would you give if somebody's listening to this?
Mhm.
They're in the depth of it. They're in
Mhm.
the middle of this purity culture environment,
Mhm.
and they can't take it anymore.
Mhm.
But they might have a family. They might have commitments in the church, and
Mhm.
you know, in some communities, it's their job and their church and their, you know, everything. What would you advise them to at least start doing if they want to start moving away from that?
That's a really good question. I think the most important thing I would say to them is that they are valued and they matter, period, bar none. Their worth is not in their morality necessarily, if that makes sense, in their sexual morality. And I would just let them know that their God or their higher power, whatever it may be, loves them and is filled with grace. And we have to live our lives authentically to ourselves because, like I said before, the only person that's going to walk in our own shoes our whole life is us. We're the only person that's going to be with us our whole lives. And it's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. And you're going to deal with pushback from people you love and admire. But even though it's not going to be easy, it's going to be worth it.
Yeah, I like that. And Siren, what about you? What would your advice to be with some young woman who's at the same point where you're at, wherever you're at in your marriage, where you realize, oh, this isn't it, and you know, I want to start moving away from this?
Well, they can reach out to us too on our platforms, the Siren of Freedom podcast.com, and send us an email. Like, reach out for us. We're going to start, like, you know, getting some resources together to, you know, help people to move away from whatever they want to move away from and move towards whatever they want to move towards. So, you know, if you're in the middle of that, just like know that there's other people out there that have gone through what you're going through and are going through what you're going through. And just because your family and your church believes and teaches one thing doesn't mean that that's what you have to do. You are, I always mess up this word, autonomous human being. So, you know, we all want to be included. We all want to be a part of something, but you can't do that at like losing your whole self and who you are and like just walking around as a shell of a human. And if that's a thing that's making you feel that way, then you need to get away from it. So, you know, some people might love the purity culture and be happy in it. But if you're not, and you're just like me, that, you know, all you can think about is that there's more and that this is wrong and that this doesn't work for you, then, you know, there's plenty of resources out there, but you can reach out to us and we can start pointing you in the right direction.
And I just want to close out what I have to say about it is that we're not disparaging religion or, you know, pastors or ministers or, you know, anyone like that. What we're saying is the purity culture has put a lot of strains and put us, men and women, in bad situations where we feel like there's a better way. And so, you know, we're not here to put anybody down. It's just more about seeing people through a certain path. And that's what I love about your podcast. It's about seeing them through that process to the freedom of whatever they want to live, the kind of life they want to live. So I'm excited.
Yep. Well, thank you, Scarlett, for being on with us today.
Thank you for having me. And
Yeah.
I agree. All I can speak on is my life experience, and I don't want to speak for anybody else. But I believe that we are here to support one another. And I just really appreciate you having me on and letting me share my stories with you.
Yeah. Because, I mean, some people, you were a very willing participant. You volunteered. And so you're actually the first one. I don't know what order these will come out with, but the first one, technically. But no matter what our story is, it's like some people might not feel like their story is worth sharing or this or that. But I just want to, anybody to be encouraged that's listening. It's like, you don't know what little part of that story of like what Scarlett shared today. Like, I think it was very impactful, but you don't know what part of that story is going to help somebody out there. So that's why it's important to, we go through hard things so that we can share stories and help other people. So thanks for being on here today. And thank you to my lovely hubby, Socrates, for being our producer. Always. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much for listening today. We hope this podcast has been an encouragement to you. You can find us on our website, thesirenoffreedom.com, and also on social media and Patreon under the Siren of Freedom podcast. Your support is what helps us continue to sound the alarm of freedom.